Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown and revisitation of Marvel's Loki Season 1, Episode 1, Glorious Purpose. So a lot has changed in the MCU since I first broke this series down, and with Season 2 coming up on Disney Plus October 6th, it definitely felt like time for a rewatch. And you know what? We were able to find so many more details and Easter eggs. I don't know how, but we were. So let's go back through the 6 episodes of Loki Season 1, starting with this one, with a fresh perspective to find out why Miss Minutes haunts my Oh, come on, not fair! We open on New York City, 2012, during Loki's escape in Avengers Endgame. The Avengers theme plays as the letters in the New York title card cycle through the options before settling like old train station flip-slap displays. The date actually starts on that swipe in 2025, if you look at those blurry numbers, and then swipes back in time until we land on 2012, as if Kang is moving a dial until he gets to the option that he wants. Now that Quantumania has come out, along with trailers for Loki Season 2, we know that He Who Remains' goal was to isolate the sacred timeline, according to director Kate Herron, from the timelines of the other variants in the Kang dynasty. So this opening date swipe is this one playwright frantically flipping back to this date to set into motion a plan to hold off his screaming cousins in that arena. We see a slightly different variation on the events from Endgame, with different takes, editing changes, and sound mixes, and focal points that make it familiar but somewhat off. Like this is the same establishing shot that was used in Endgame, but with the portal beam, the Chitauri, and some explosions removed because the battle has ended. This moment is also slightly different.
On my way down to coordinate search and rescue. On my way down to coordinate search and rescue. On my way down to coordinate search and rescue. On my way down to coordinate search and rescue.
In the new take, Loki's Steve Rogers impression is far more robotic. And yes, this calls back to when Loki impersonated Steve Rogers in Thor: The Dark World. But either way, right off the bat, we are clued into the fact that there are alterations to the timeline. Unlike in the film, when we stayed on Hulk's reaction to Loki's taunting wave, this time we stay on Loki as the elevator doors close and he descends to the lobby. Really, the show is very much about Loki in elevators, because we are already seeing a branch in the sacred timeline at this point, just by the Avengers looping back to this point in time. Little butterfly effects have started to ripple effect and change things. Another little change, in the original scene when the Tesseract slid out of the briefcase to Loki's feet, it made no sound, but now it has a full choral hum to it. Loki believes that the Tesseract is a main part of his glorious purpose of achieving God King status, and this episode slaps that belief right out of him. And it's actually shown later in the episode when the hum dies away after he realizes there are an infinite number of useless Infinity Stones in that drawer, and really all this time he's just been trying to get his hands on a glorified paperweight.
We actually got a lot of those. Some of the guys use them as paperweights.
As Loki grabs the Space Stone and disappears, we hear Thor's panicked voice calling out back in the timeline.
Where's Loki?
Loki just altered history, creating a branch timeline, and we see the altered Marvel Studios title logo now in Loki's signature green and gold colors. We cut to this bug crawling, reflected in a drop of water in the Gobi Desert. The sky opens up and Loki crashes into the sand, recalling the moment in Quantumania when Kang crash lands into the quantum realm. The shot composition is also reminiscent of Iron Man's desert landing. 3 characters who are prone to egomania, but whereas Kang digs in and doubles down, Tony evolves into someone more selfless, and Loki really could go down either of those paths at this point. Loki greets the locals with his line from the Avengers and is hilariously shut down instantly, foreshadowing the journey he's about to go on.
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
And again, Glorious Purpose is the title of this first episode, and we see Loki's glorious purpose changing from Conqueror to Compliant Variant. Just as in this series, we're seeing the spectrum of Kangs, shifting from the Conqueror, who's trapped in the quantum realm, to the one we meet in this series, the one who remains, trying to keep the multiverse from unraveling. That is the journey Loki will go on. A group of time cops from the TVA show up. TVA, of course, the Time Variance Authority, who I have to say, kind of a throwaway entity in the Marvel Comics, but in this show, so freaking cool. This group is led by Hunter B-15, played by Wunmi Mosaku, and you can see hash marks on her helmet, perhaps marking how many timelines she has reset. She keeps track of it this way because otherwise the members of the TVA have no other way of keeping track of time. This entrance by portal opening and holding this handheld device definitely reminds me of any time AI showed up on Quantum Leap. There seem to be a few nods to other time travel shows throughout Loki. We'll talk about them as we go. On B-15 scanner, Loki is labeled variant L1130, and you'll notice the units drop from 5 towards 0. The soldiers carry batons with glowing tips, some glow orange, some glow purple. Purple is really the signature colors of Kang. That is the more dangerous of the two colors. B-15 wallops Loki across the face, forcing him to feel the pain of this hit in time-dilated slow motion. It's so simple of a visual effect, but it's so effective, forcing Loki into this humiliation of his flapping lips because he's always running his mouth. Wunmi Mosaku also plays an admin who tortures Wyatt Russell via time dilation in the Black Mirror episode Playtest. So Loki is taken into custody, and the timeline is pruned using a reset charge that changes from orange to purple. The sound the reset charge makes actually sounds a lot like that bug crawling across the sand. So just like the footsteps of that bug across the desert sand, erased by the wind, so too is this branch timeline swept from existence. So as they enter the TVA, you can see the moment when the Tesseract stops glowing, as it is sapped of any magic. The interior of the TVA uses a lot of 70s style orange tones, and the circle designs on the ceiling throughout the building reminded me of the TARDIS on Doctor Who.
I do miss Papa Buttons. Everything's so swipey these days.
It also might just be because the new promos featuring Loki and Sylvie in McDonald's for season 2, but the bright colors and plastic furniture definitely look like the inside of a McDonald's to me. Actually, the TVA as a whole is color coded so that the walls and outfits are orange on the bottom security level, green on the mid-tier office level, and then gold on the top tier legal level. We actually see a Skrull variant and he's wearing a tracksuit. So maybe there was a Skrull in the tracksuit mafia in Hawkeye. I gotta wonder which side of the two Skrull factions we saw in Secret Invasion this guy's on. B-15 uses a time twister to rewind Loki. In the comics, the time twisters are beings that move backward in time to destroy all in their path. Here, the device is a remote leash to whoever wears the collar. Comedian Josh Fadem cameos playing variant Martin, possibly based on Farmer Bro Martin Shkreli.
My dad is on the board of Goldman Sachs. One little call and your whole job is privatized.
We also see comedian Eugene Cordero playing the TVA clerk Casey, who always seems confused and frazzled. He's so good on this series. The pens in his pocket leak more and more ink into his shirt throughout the episode. He comments that the Tesseract sounds dumb, which sets up what we find out later, that here the Infinity Stones have no real value. Loki is stripped naked by this disturbing robot with a face on its screen. He looks a bit like Herbie from the comics, who was a robot sidekick of the Fantastic Four, but everything from this slow smile to the glitchy eye just so unsettling, even before it removes Loki's clothes and plops him into a prison jumpsuit. This whole scene is similar to the scene in Thor Ragnarok when Stan Lee gives Thor a haircut.
Now don't you move. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be.
In the transcript room, Loki's greeted by an adorable purring cat whose face is also on the mug. The cat's owner is playing solitaire on his screen, which reminds me of this moment in the Avengers.
Batman is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
The clock on the wall has multiple hands and way too many numbers on it, just like all the clocks in the TVA. Kind of like in a casino, TVA employees are trapped from knowing what time it really is. It is a prison. And in keeping with old technology, Loki's transcript, which should probably be way longer than this, prints from a dot matrix printer. Loki falls through the floor again and lands in front of this metal detector looking machine that scans someone's temporal aura and ensures that they're not a robot, and then melts them from the inside if they are. This moment definitely hits differently when you find out later that the timekeepers themselves are Chuck E. Cheese style robots being controlled by He Who Remains. Loki asks,
What if I was a robot and I didn't know it?
yes, a bit of existential panic underlying this whole season. Do any of us have free will in He Who Remains scripted reality, or are we his clockwork, his machines? In the line room with all the stanchions, it looks like a DMV, there's a poster on the wall showing Ms. Minutes warning, behave or you'll get your clock cleaned. And then we get this explanatory video from Ms. Minutes, who in trailers for season 2 is even more terrifying than we initially thought, and was with a version of Victor Timely at the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893, which I think might have been the origin of this entire TVA bureaucracy. This video has a distinct Jurassic Park, Mr. DNA video vibe to it, but I made another video recently about Miss Minutes explaining that Kate Herron's original idea in this episode was for Miss Minutes to jump off the screen in this pilot episode, and that the designers from Luma VFX said that they based her on Felix the Cat and Betty Boop, and that this welcome video was based on the propaganda videos from the 1950s, like one called A is for Atom about atomic energy, and another one called Destination Earth about oil made by an oil company. So at the end of the video, when it says produced by the Time Variance Authority Narrative Commission, yeah, we definitely get a sense that this is all bullshit. It's hiding the fact that the temporal energy that they are processing in this facility is extremely volatile. Miss Minutes is of course voiced by Tara Strong, who also came back to voice Mainframe in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Welcome to the Time Variance Authority. I'm Miss Minutes, And it's my job to catch you up before you stand trial for your crimes.
I love how Miss Minutes is locked up in a cuckoo clock initially, the bars of the clock mimicking prison bars, and the pendulum is actually a prison ball and chain. I just noticed this. Then we get a thunderclap and a bunch of starbursts, the imagery almost matching frame for frame the A is for Adam video. Miss Minutes explains.
Long ago, there was a vast multiversal war. Countless unique timelines battled each other for supremacy, nearly resulting in the total destruction of, well, everything.
So these events are what Reed Richards will later refer to in Multiverse of Madness as incursions, when the boundary between universes erodes and they collide, destroying one or both of those universes. Miss Minutes goes on to say that the all-knowing timekeepers reorganize the multiverse into a single timeline. Also among this animated imagery, we see these warring alien races, which I think are the Kree versus the Titans. We see similarly armored Kree in the Marvels film, and the purple ones look like the residents of Thanos' homeworld of Titan. Then we see this little yellow example in a hat and bow tie, and his variants switch, always keeping the bow tie, from a sea captain, a big muscly guy who reminded me of Bluto from Popeye, and then a mughead man, and a James Bond style mad scientist with an eye patch, and then a guy in a top hat, which kind of resembles Loki and Mobius's look in the trailer for season 2. Miss Minutes explains that stepping off a path creates a nexus event, which could lead to another multiversal war. Now, since this is a rewatch, we know that this is all bullshit. It's a story concocted by He Who Remains to maintain order and prevent the Kang variants from seizing power. But like any good propaganda, there are enough truths scattered throughout to make it sound plausible. The video ends and Loki says this.
Timekeepers, the sacred timeline. Who actually believes this bunkum?
And later on this episode, he'll add,
the idea that your little club decides the fate of trillions of people across all of existence at the behest of 3 space lizards. Yes, it's funny. It's absurd.
So he actually gets it correct right off the bat. This is bunkum. Lies designed to maintain control, and the timekeepers are in fact fake. And in the Quantumania post-credit scene, one of the Kang variants is a reptilian lizard. So Martin gets terrifyingly reset, and the way he screams, it does not sound like a pleasant experience.
Were you raising your voice with me, Buckethead?
So these main titles were done by the design lab Perception in a white fuzzy glow on a black background, and you can see one of the O's has little horns like Loki's horned crown. The people of Perception stated, we designed the opening title for this series to pay homage to Loki's shapeshifting nature, text from previous films, title sequences, and comic books that Loki has appeared in, alien typography from the series, and even Norse runes can be seen flickering throughout the logo. Then we meet Agent Mobius, Owen Wilson, in France 1549. He's based on Mobius M. Mobius from the comics. He's investigating the killings of hunters and Minutemen by a mystery murderer who turns out later to be Sylvie, a female variant of Loki, played by Sophia DiMartino. She lured them here to steal their reset charges using this kablooey gum, an anachronistic item left in the past that they would then have to come and deal with. But it does show something nice about this character, that she gave the gum to a kid. So there is a heart in there. Mobius is handed Loki variant L1130's rap sheet, and we see that he is Loki Laufeyson, son of Laufey. That's the Jotunheim frost giant from the first Thor movie. And he goes by the name Loki Odinson because he didn't actually know he was Laufey's son until the events of Thor, but the sex is listed as fluid, which is just a clue pointing to the fact that different variants can have different sexes. Now, longtime New Rockstars viewers know how much we use Geologie and how long we've been using it for, but if this is your first time hearing about Geologie, get ready for blockbuster quality skincare on a student film budget. Geologie is a 23-time award-winning skin, hair, and body care company recognized in Men's Health, Oprah Daily, Hypebeast, Birdie, Esquire, and GQ. Geologie's products are just a handful of powerful, proven ingredients that have been trusted by dermatologists for decades. Geologie can help you fight acne, reduce oiliness, prevent wrinkles, combat dark or puffy under eyes, have smoother, hydrated skin, and target signs of aging. Everything you need to keep your skin healthy, no matter how much you soak in the pool this summer. Don't know where to start? Geologie can create a simple and effective skincare or hair care routine for you. All you gotta do is take a quick 30-second quiz. Right now, if you use the code NewRockstars100, Geologie will give you 100% off their award-winning skincare trial set. You'll also get an additional bonus offer of up to 30% off one skin, hair, or body products when you add it to your trial. It's truly a wild offer, one of the best they've ever given our audience. So click the link in the description or go to geolog.ie/rockstars100 to get started. In the courtroom, there are murals all over the wall showing TVA clerks, technicians, and judges, one of whom is wearing glasses and a mustache, kind of looking like a younger Stan Lee. We meet Justice Ravonna Renslayer, played by Gugu Mbatha-Raw, sitting in front of the looming faces of the 3 timekeepers, and sitting directly in front of the kissing lips of the center one. In the comics, she was the love of Kang the Conqueror, and she threw herself in front of a blast to save his life. In season 2, her other identity, Rebecca Tormenay, will be beside Victor Timely in that 1893 era. Loki tries to shift blame to the Avengers and their time heist, but Renslayer shoots him down.
We're not here to talk about the Avengers.
Oh no?
No. What they did was supposed to happen. You escaping was not.
So what the Avengers did was given the okay by He Who Remains, and when they put the Infinity Stones back, it set the timeline right again. But still, I've always interpreted this to mean He Who Remains wanted the Avengers to break the rules of time travel to defeat Thanos. Loki has some embarrassing performance issues.
How do you plead?
Guilty of this.
What's going on?
Yeah, magic doesn't work in the TVA. Renslayer pronounces him guilty and sentences him to be reset, but Mobius intervenes and takes Loki on a little tour of the TVA, and it seems massive. One of the spires is labeled T282, which could be a nod to Thor issue 282, which was our first appearance of the Timekeepers. They get to the elevator, and the elevator buttons have these 3-character alphanumeric code that many of us online have tried to decipher over the years, but so far they don't seem to refer to anything specific. Maybe we'll get some answers in season 2, but the end credits, we do see one of those codes again, 1EJ, and it's immediately hit with access denied. Maybe it's to the automat and someone's trying to double dip on slices of key lime pie. In the Time Theater, Mobius cracks open a Josta, a discontinued soft drink from the 90s made by PepsiCo and was marketed as a high energy drink. It was only around from 1995 to 1999. I thought maybe based off this that Loki could be from the late 90s, but in the season 2 trailer, his past as a jet ski salesman is, rumor has it, the scene set in 2022. Loki tells Mobius that he wanted to rule over Midgard and then eventually all of space, and Mobius replies,
"Why does someone with so much range just want to rule?"
This is perhaps some meta commentary on comic book villains just always wanting power, but for no real reason. And Loki responds,
"I would have made it easy for them. The first and most oppressive lie ever uttered was the song of freedom. For nearly every living thing, choice breeds shame and uncertainty and regret."
This is similar to what Loki said in Germany. Is this not easier? And Mobius shows him this moment among his greatest hits in the TVA Holo Projector.
The bright lure of freedom diminishes your life's joy in a mad scramble for power.
We see the events from the previous films, Loki killing Coulson, Loki stealing that eyeball, and then the Battle of New York freezes on the waitress Beth, played by Athlete Johnson or Chrissy Seaver from Growing Pains, and the voice of Ellie in The Last of Us games, who played Ellie's mom in The Last of Us HBO series. There was actually a Steve Rogers subplot that got cut from that film. Perhaps we can now look at that as a prune branch storyline. Mobius reveals that Loki was real-life mystery hijacker D.B. Cooper, a man who hijacked a Northwest Orient Airlines flight in 1971 by saying he had a bomb and then demanded $200,000 and parachuted out over Washington and was never found or identified. William Scott was actually the name of the pilot on that flight. Here, Heimdall catches Loki with the Bifrost, leaving cash floating, a nod to the fact that all they ever found of D.B. Cooper was some cash floating in the Columbia River. Loki apparently did all this because he lost a bet to Thor. Mobius tells Loki that he wants to know what makes Loki tick, which is true since he is hunting Sylvie, and he needs to know why she is doing what she's doing, and Loki once again gets it right.
"I know what this place is."
"What is it?"
"It's an illusion."
As a trickster prone to weaving illusions himself, Loki can spot the machinations behind what the TVA is presenting him. We see Friggate's death from Thor the Dark World and events that are still in the future from this point for this Loki. And it's kind of like that scene in Scrooged when the ghost of Christmas past tells Frank that even the worst people cry when they see memories of their mothers.
Merry Christmas, Frankie Angel.
Merry Christmas to you, Mama.
Niagara Falls, Frankie Angel.
Mobius helps Loki up, and this is the moment Loki picks his pocket if you look closely. He uses B-15's entrance as a distraction. The projected Avengers rotate counterclockwise, but when we cut back to Loki after Mobius leaves, they rotate clockwise, maybe because Loki stealing the Time Twister might not have been part of He Who Remains' plan. Loki's on kind of a brief branch timeline before he loops back to this room at the end of the episode. That's why when he comes back to this room later, as Mobius wants him to, it rotates the correct way again. Loki sees another variant in the background being detained, and this one kind of looks like Peggy Carter, which kind of would make sense if Steve Rogers going back with Peggy in Endgame created a branch timeline like the film's directors claimed it did. Head writer Mike Waldron was asked about this after episode 1 if Peggy and Steve were targeted by the TVA for doing that, and he said, "That's a good question, man. I don't think I can answer that. I think maybe just keep watching." So whether this variant was supposed to be confirmation or we haven't gotten the answer to that yet, only time will tell. Loki tells Casey,
"Give me the Tesseract or I'll gut you like a fish, Casey."
Which could be a nod to this scene in Scream with Drew Barrymore, whose character is also named Casey.
"You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish."
Loki gets a Tesseract back and he sees a drawer filled with Infinity Stones along with many other interesting things. A super rare T206 Honus Wagner baseball card, a military medal, a crucifix, a casino chip, and I just noticed this, there is a white reel-to-reel tape box with what looks like the word Watergate on it. So it's possible that the missing 18 minutes from Rosemary Wood's Watergate tapes, what would have been the smoking gun for Richard Nixon, were in this drawer. Later in the end credits, you can see a Mind Stone being used as a paperweight, just like what Casey says some of the others use them for. Sad music plays as Loki realizes he's been chasing something useless, and he says,
"Is this the greatest power in the universe?"
I love how Casey sort of face shrugs at this rhetorical question because, like, dude has no idea. He spends all of his time behind a desk. He doesn't even know what a fish is. On the screen, we actually see Vormir, the location of the Soul Stone, confirming that these Infinity Stones are indeed real. When Loki returns to that projection room, he drops the Tesseract, which now just makes a regular hollow plunk noise as it hits the ground, since it no longer holds any meaning for him here. Loki returns to Frigga's death. This violin melody was composed by Loki composer Natalie Holt, who actually egged Simon Cowell for ruining the music industry when she worked as a backup musician on Britain's Got Talent. Loki also sees Odin's death.
"I love you, my sons."
We see that great Huddleston reaction shot when Odin calls him a son too. Then finally, Loki sees his own death, and the film strip, which is labeled 616, plays out as Thor mourns his brother. Interestingly, the film strip runs beyond the moment of Loki's death, so really he remains wanted Loki to see Thor's reaction. Loki began this episode with the belief that he had a glorious purpose, but now seeing himself and everyone else in his life die, and his precious Infinity Stones robbed of any power and meaning, he has no purpose. He needs a new glorious purpose. And in his despair, he's finally able to tell Mobius the truth.
I don't enjoy hurting people. I don't enjoy it. I do it because I have to, because I've had to, because it's part of the illusion. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear.
Now that Mobius has determined that Loki has a soul and isn't just a villain, as this whole episode has really been a Voight-Kampff test. Do you have a soul or not? Mobius offers him a chance at redemption by helping him find the Loki variant that has been killing TVA agents.
Why me?
The variant we're hunting is you.
And we cut to an oil field in Salina, Oklahoma in 1858. Oklahoma, by the way, the original comic site of New Asgard after the events of Ragnarok. If you look closely at this tool, the screen shows it is a quantum ore shovel produced by AIM from the early 3rd millennium. So Sylvie springs her trap, grabbing the reset charge and setting the field on fire, her silhouette looking very much like the demon in the stained glass in the French church. What is quantum ore? I actually went into a whole theory about that in my deep dive of the entirety of Loki Season 1 on the Deep Dive channel. Now to talk briefly about the end credits titles, these were also done by the design studio Perception, and they said that this sequence, quote, was based on the bureaucracy of the TVA and seeing Loki through their eyes. It is filled with mundane depictions of imagery within a typical office. However, each of these elements is paired with something magical to showcase the otherworldly existence of the TVA. Some examples of these include stacks of files being held down by Infinity Stones used as paperweights, a water cooler with a tidy timeline poster behind it, and a clock with more than the traditional amount of hands. So we first see Loki's case file, complete with a photo of him and his thumbprints, and underneath that is a report about Loki's plea agreement, and there are names redacted. There's a coffee pot labeled fresh, 800 BC, just a bit of that mundane mixed with the magical. There's a poster that says hunters and analysts working in tandem with an image of a nerdy analyst and a badass hunter. Maybe there's some intra-office rivalry between the two groups, and this poster is a reminder that, you know, we're all in this together, folks. Next to that poster are some pinned equations and figures, like figure R, variants. We also see a bit of Schrodinger's equation, dealing with the Schrodinger's cat thought experiment from physicist Erwin Schrödinger that said that a cat in a box with some poison is both alive and dead until the box is opened. I've always wanted that cat that we saw earlier in the transcript room to be a variant version of Schrödinger's cat in a box. I just want its name to be Schrödinger. The text with the credits jumps around on the screen, which Perception said was a nod to jumping through time, and then we see a TVA apocalyptic event report that lists failure to intervene in dire circumstances under the details. There's another apocalyptic event report describing Loki's involvement in the DB Cooper plane hijacking, and yet another report with some thick research books on top, and then we see the TVA chrono monitoring handbook that has a coffee ring stain on it, which is something else that comes up in episode 2 with Mobius leaving coffee ring stains on Renslayer's side table. There's some light up switches on a board, each labeled with 3 values, kind of like the 3 characters on each elevator button. There's also a variant diagram which shows a main figure with 5 variants branching from it. Each one has a different shaped head, a square, triangle, pentagon, hexagon, and just an X, kind of looking like the board game Perfection. There's some kablooey gum in an evidence bag, a clock with a bunch of hands, one of which is moving backwards, a binder full of redacted reports. We see the Wake magazine on Mobius's desk. That's a jet skiing one that's featured in episode 2. And we end on an image of the 3 timekeeper faces in the courtroom. At the very end of the credits, you can hear the voice of Miss Minutes.
Thanks for visiting the TVA. Don't hesitate to let us know how we're doing.
And it is worth noting that the end credits sequence changes slightly with each episode. New photos or details are added, and the whole thing speeds up or slows down based on the tone of the episode. It's a cool detail that shows how much attention they paid to everything in the series, which will be something we explore with breakdowns of episode 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're doing all of them in the month of September as we look ahead to Loki Season 2 on October 6th. We want to make sure we caught every possible detail from the first season. Please subscribe to all 3 channels in the New Rockstars network. I want to thank Gina Ippolito for writing this re-breakdown. You can follow me on all social platforms at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.